Hey, everybody. We're going to give just a minute or two for other folks to join before we get started. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody for logging in for a half hour with us this morning. I'm Will Johnson. I'm head of sales for TraceAir here, and today we want to talk about the much talked about labor shortage in the construction industry, and talking specifically about leveraging technology and how to use technology to mitigate those labor shortages. And today, our panelists are Dan Dunmoyer, who's CEO of the California Building Industry Association, Josh Engelbricht, who is CEO of Toolbelt, and Zach Neu, who is area manager at Independent Construction. To get started, Dan, you want to introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us about what you and your organization do.
Thanks, Will. Thanks for the opportunity. Good morning, everyone. Dan Dunmoyer with the California Building Industry Association. So we're the trade association that represents the home builders in California and land developers. So 8.5 out of 10 housing units built in California are built by one of our members. So names you would know like Lennar KB, Taylor Morrison, but names you wouldn't know just like custom builders, small builders. So it's soup to nuts. So, and we are advocates on behalf of the industry before the California State Legislature, Governor's Office, myriad of regulatory agencies in California, and then advocacy on specific legislation. So thanks, Will, for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming and lending your expertise. Josh.
Hey, thanks, Will. It's really great to be here. Hey, everyone, how's it going? So my background, I've been a general contractor for about 8 years. Like many of you guys that are attending this meeting today, I suffered from finding skilled labor and crews, whether that was subcontractors or, finding the in-house carpenter. And what I kind of stumbled upon was that, primarily we source labor, and opportunities for work through word of mouth in the industry. And so what my organization does here at Toolbelt is we created the first platform that actually connects home builders, GCs, contractors to skilled labor, whether that's subcontractors or the individual tradesperson. So currently the markets that we service is we service all of the Pacific Northwest and Southern California and soon to be Northern California. So it's really great to be here. Thanks, Will.
Sure thing. Zach.
Sure. Zach Neu with Independent Construction. Been with Independent for about 16 years now. Independent is a third generation heavy civil company specializing in mass grading a lot of housing, master plan, communities, subdivisions, but heavy civil earthwork in general for many, many years.
Gotcha. Thank you. Well, to get started, I guess the first question is, we hear all about the labor shortage in construction. We've been hearing about it for years. And what does this really mean for construction at large? And maybe how does it specifically affect home builders? Dan, did you want to start us off with that?
By now, just a couple macro thoughts, Will. I'm glad to share that. So a few thoughts here. You just look at employment in general, and I'm going to try to bring up a screen here and see if I can get this to work. Effectively, just our economy in general, we're all seeing this. We've got 11 million job openings in the United States of America. So this is beyond construction. But I wanted to share this with you. We have more job openings than we have potential employees in this country. So just in general terms, we've got a labor shortage. Second thing I just want to kind of mention to you in this process, we are kind of back to normal post-pandemic. So some of that was driving it, but we're almost where we were as of February 2020. This is as of last month. We still have a lot of older people are more apt to work than younger. It's primarily because of demographics, not necessarily laziness. Participation, still a lot of people don't want to work, at least not as many as did in 2000. And then just to specific to today in our discussion, there is a shortage. So this comes as a national statistic, but it pretty much bears out in California and the Pacific air regions. This is where when you ask our builders where they're finding a shortage of labor, either through superintendents or their own activities, these are the areas that we're seeing the greatest need. Now, more physical labor, the more harder it is to find. As you get into more technology, people prefer not to lift heavy lumber as opposed to lifting computer devices. So the other thing just to be aware of is there's still an increase. We were, unlike the last Great Recession, so you recall we had a pretty serious recessionary position with the COVID activities, but we actually were the first to come out, partly because 47 of the 50 states kept housing as essential. And so we were actually a place people could get work. So unlike the last Great Recession, where a lot of people left our industry, this time we were the ones who built out of it. We're still shy 381,000 jobs across this industry. So pretty big. Last thing I'll say is wages are up because of this. So you're paying more for talent. Productivity is about the same. And then the last thing I'll just say in the context of it, just on a feet, we're really pushing to get more women into our industry. And what we're seeing is it's pretty much the same as it was in 2005, 2006 at our last peak. So we still need to work harder at this. I'll stop there and we'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. That's some great information. Any chance that we can talk you into sending us that deck after this so we can distribute that? That looked like a lot of good information.
Glad to.
Yeah, Zach, what are your thoughts there? What does this shortage mean to you there at Independent?
Sure. I mean, we're seeing it both in the field and the office from a management standpoint. The field workers, the operators, the laborers, we're definitely seeing a shortage there. We're seeing the older generation retiring out, maybe, just getting fed up with some of the things and being done with it, and choosing to retire out and enjoy the rest of their life. So it's causing us to bring people up and kind of move them up the chain, which is good for some people, but still, leaving spots open. We're seeing the shortage in the office as well from a project engineer standpoint, project managers, estimators, trying to fill those gaps, trying to bring people into a new industry. We've had a lot of people that have moved from different types of construction, whether it's mechanical or electrical, and kind of moved into a management role in a new industry. So trying to adapt there, but definitely a lot of holes and gaps that are trying to be filled and we're struggling with.
Gotcha. No, thank you. And that kind of echoes some things that I have been hearing about, people getting creative about bringing folks in from other industries. And this is a little bit off topic, but are any of you seeing any sort of good programs out there for bringing experienced people with maybe experiences outside of construction into the construction industry? So folks that, maybe they were in sales or they whatever other industry, but that sort of training programs. What are you guys seeing with that?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely are a little bit. I think our company's in a little bit of a unique situation because we are a union shop, right? So we have to hire within the local, but we do have kind of a feeder system, if you will, to try to get people exposed to the craft at a lower level. So we have kind of a non-union feeder system to provide exposure. But ultimately, they have to be within the union to hire on to be a field worker.
Understood. That makes sense. Josh, what are your thoughts in general about the construction labor shortage, and what are you seeing? You kind of bring a unique point of view to the conversation.
Yeah, well, I just want to first off probably start by really echoing Zach and Dan's comments on it. I think it's a really large issue, and I think a lot of industries suffer from it. I mean, there's a huge housing inventory shortage, right? And I think the rising cost of inflation and wage increases that gets passed on to the end consumer. I think probably the first part of the labor shortage is, I think you always hear, just as kind of the 30,000 foot view that we see here at Toolbelt, is we have a lot of people on our platform, they're also the small contractor too, which I think, if you look at the demographics of the residential construction industry, about 80% of the industry is small outfits, right? And I think what we hear from a lot of our customers is they have a hard time finding labor too. And it kind of speaks to what Dan was saying. I think, my age group, a little bit older than I probably look a little bit, but the rising people coming in here, they're our high schools have done a job of steering people towards college, even if they're not meant to be there. And I think if people, to one of Zach's points, if people knew what wages were in construction, they would probably pursue it more as a career, right? Like outside of your general labor, right? But if you're in a major metro area, your general labor, you're probably getting paid $20 an hour, right? Like, if not close to it, at least in Southern California, I imagine that. And, but if you're a really talented carpenter or plumber, right? I think you can have a really successful career. Most plumbers I know, in 2 acres in Southwest Washington, right? I don't know any plumber that's living in a bad situation. And so, but I think it affects both sides of the industry. I think the first thing people need to understand is we're a really relationship driven industry. So it's like a home builder and a subcontractor, right? And I think the labor tension is felt on a lot of home builders have that relationship with a sub that they trust and they want to grow with that subcontractor, but they're limited by that subcontractor not being able to find additional tradespeople to keep up with that capacity. And so, I think it's a double-edged sword. And I think it takes a lot of solutions. I think starting with actually re-educating, starting in the high school of putting shop class back in there, like where I'm from in the Midwest, like we still had it, but I went back to my high school, 5 years ago, and they don't even have it anymore. And I think that's a giant problem.
Oh, that's great. You touched on a couple of really interesting things that I want to address there. The first was in a previous conversation that I had with you, you had mentioned how many contractors it actually takes to build a house. What's that number?
I'd actually defer to Dan because I don't want to get it wrong because he deals with home builders every day. But I would say at least probably 24 trades. It could be even more if it's a custom house for sure.
Yeah, we said 25 to 30. We're in the same number. So
Yeah. So, you even get a few of those contractors that are having, a labor shortage and it throws off their scheduling, then, there's a huge ricochet effect, right? Or domino effect, I should say. So that's really interesting. Another thing that you touched on that I wanted to, again, loop back to Dan a little bit is, that whole idea of exciting and educating the newer generations to get into the trades. I have a junior in high school and we're having these conversations right now. He's not sure what he wants to do. Does he want to go to college? Does he want to go into the trades? We're having those conversations. And Dan, I know that you guys, are kind of on the forefront of building out some really neat sounding programs to help educate young people. Are you seeing that kind of across the nation?
now we're seeing them both in California and across the nation. But Zach and Josh accurately touched on just how difficult it is to create that pipeline, whether it's union-based or non-union based. And so just to build on Josh's comment, and think about this for yourselves, but the pressure in the United States in the last 25 years has been all kids have to go to college because college is the pathway towards economic security. And there's wisdom in that. But as Josh pointed out, not everybody's wired for college. And Will, to your question, like, hey, how many 15-year-olds really know what they want to do when they grow up? So what we've been working on is an organization called BITA, Building Industry Technology Academy, which is in California. It's in about 50 schools. So it's the idea of bringing back what Josh touched on, which is wood shop, metal shop. And the challenge is, when you're 14, you're like, well, I want my kid to go to college and become a gazillionaire, but I don't know if they don't even like books now. So what makes me think they'll like them 4 years from now? What's great about BITA is you don't have to make that decision when they're 14. You can put them on a path for being a collegiate educated person, or they can be on a different path to make even more money going into the trades. And so what we found is we have created a curriculum that is UC certified. So it's an elective that allows you to go to any UC. It's a verified curriculum-based elective. And you can start learning framing and the electrical and the whole 9 yards, gain some hands-on, have competitions in building small houses for veterans and for various shelters. If you fall in love with the outdoors part of it, then we move you into the trades, and that's both here in California and nationally through the community college basis. And if you're like, well, no, I really like the architectural side or the engineering side, where you're finding people harder to find, then you can go to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo or UCLA, or you can go to any of the major universities using that same elective as a credential credit for any of those programs. So we're, because you as a parent, you might say, well, I'd like them to be the architect, or I want to be the CEO of the company, like Zach is someday. Well, great, you don't have to decide that when they're 14. And so we're trying to give them just encouragement to consider the trades. And this misnomer that you make more money after you go through 2 years of junior college, you drop out, have debt, work as a barista at Starbucks, God bless you. But if you actually learned how to frame a house when you're 18, or even more so using large earth moving equipment, you're making $120,000 a year with no college debt and a great career ahead of you. So that's what we're trying to show. There is a path to economic success. And if you like playing, in the dirt outdoors and making a lot of money, there's a path to do that. And we're trying to show that earlier rather than later.
That's fantastic. Great news. Thank you for that. Circling back to the technology aspect, I mean, each of you are coming from a little different corner of this industry. But how are you seeing technology being successfully leveraged now to help mitigate these labor shortages? Zach, I know that you are, India is pretty tech enabled. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about how you guys are leveraging tech tools to be more efficient?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. We've been a big user of TraceAir itself. Drone technology, flying drones on our projects, mapping our projects, documenting them. And it really helps with the day-to-day management of it, from an office standpoint. It allows you to be able to be in tune with your project on a day-to-day basis, but not actually have to be on the job. So our superintendents don't have to drive to every job every day to be getting with that foreman to figure out what's going on or where they're going next and all that kind of stuff. So efficiency wise, that's one aspect. There's a big push right now for work-life balance. And in addition with COVID and like it was touched on, housing was essential during COVID. We were forced to kind of modify, our work functions and figure out how to work virtually during COVID. And so we've had to set up tools and computer programs so that, our project engineers, project managers can be virtual and work from home. And, it aids to what people are looking for, and pushing for that work-life balance. I think it's also a generational kind of transition where people are just looking for that, right? And if your industry is not willing to adapt to it, it's such a high priority for them that they're going to go elsewhere. And it's been a big, it's been big in technology and the .com stuff, that those guys are working from home and the ability is there. And so people, if they have to get out of construction to have that a part of their life, that's something that they're doing and something that we've even seen. So, whether it's accounting software or project management software, it's definitely, something that has taken hold and, the ability is there in the construction industry to be a part of that.
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting how much this COVID phenomenon has really changed the way that we work. And it's not just, like you said, it's not just in certain industries, it's all the way around.
Yeah.
Josh, how are you seeing technology used to mitigate the labor shortages that in a successful way?
Yeah, I want to start by saying I think there's a false perception that the construction industry does not adopt technology. I hear it all the time from, deal with in my line of work, I deal with a lot of people in Silicon Valley, and you get a lot of these people from tech and they think they can come in and construction needs to, bring fire to the masses, right? And I think what I always tell people is we don't build houses the same way that we did in 1920 right? And I think the part with technology, specifically with construction, is you have to build a product that has market fit for the adoption of the stakeholders that are in the industry. And what COVID has shown, just to, Will, your point and Zach's point, is it actually accelerated our industry, in my opinion, probably 5 years, forward, right? From like, okay, like we can't go talk to our customers in person anymore. How are we, but we still have to build houses. How are we going to do that, right? And I thought the industry did a phenomenal job of adopting technology on that aspect of it. I think in general, the purpose of technology is to make things easier and more productive. And so therefore, I think whatever solutions, whether it's, a CRM or an ERP, I think it has to be intuitive, right? If you think of like a drill, it's literally point, click, right? There's, you don't need an instruction manual to know how to operate a drill or a nail gun, right? And that's by design, right? That's technology. And so I think when you think of digital technology, how to bridge the labor gap, I think you have to build software that is very intuitive for both sides to use to communicate, like the people like Zach, and then the end person is actually using the equipment to move the dirt. And I think a lot of people miss the boat. They try to build technology for this side or for this side, when really, if you think of the most powerful tools that we use to communicate, whether it's like a Facebook or an IG or, Twitter, they're very simple software. It's literally you type in, you press a button, right? And so I think we have to have software that's very intuitive for our customer base. And I think if you partner with associations, like Dan's, and I think they're very progressive in their approach, for their customers and their members on how to adopt technology. So that's kind of where I see it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I have been selling construction technology for a number of years now. And to me, the most obvious, most important piece is this going to be adopted? Is this easy to adopt? Is this something that your guys, not only in the office, but your people out in the field, the men and women that are out there, are they going to want to use this? Because if it's not simple enough to be able to use and quickly adopt and use on your cell phone, you're just not going to get people using it, right? And so that's a real key part of successful adoption, I have found.
I
Yeah.
think the last point I really want to make on this labor shortage issue from a tech standpoint is, why is there potentially a shortage, right? If I were to summarize like my experience in construction, I would say especially in residential, more so than commercial, you're on a job site for 3 to 5 months, right? It's more of a tenured. In residential construction, the work is very transactional and the labor force is very dynamic. I'm on this development this week. I'm looking for my next job. I think the pain point that no one talks about is if, Dan, Zach, and I are all on a job site till 8 o'clock at night, we're relying on our network of people to keep us busy because I can't go do an estimate. I can't go do that. And so I think there's but lead generation services, charge a pretty penny right now. And so I think a lot of smaller contractors are in a pinch, and so I think bridging this labor gap, you have to somehow, build software that connects parties that need people, that need labor for this specific job, and labor that has that specific skill set to find that builder, right, or that general contractor. So
Gotcha. Dan, what are your thoughts about successful technology implementation in the industry?
Well, a couple come to mind on the home sales side. Josh touched on it. I mean, we did move to a complete virtual sales process, and found that people did like to. I mean, we did the right filming and the right development of our job sites. We could walk them through the home. They could walk themselves through the home, and we were amazed at how many homes we would sell without somebody. I mean, they would drive in the area, but they would never enter the home because of COVID, and yet they were willing to buy the home. I mean, effectively, personally sight unseen, but very well viewed by walking through our websites. So that just moved to a whole new level. I think the other piece of this that we are saying on the technology side, I mean, in California today, we build the most energy efficient, water efficient, seismically safe homes in the world. The only ones who get close to us are the Japanese. And so, we are embracing technology, embracing the new green order in California, and that requires you to be technologically smart. The last thing, and I'll give a shout out to TraceAir on this, because of our complex regulatory concepts, specifically Board of Forestry is going to come out with a new topographical design for every single job site of a major master plan community. Simultaneously, you're going to have stormwater runoff issues. So two regulations that are moving through the process right now. So you're going to get a regulator or a fire chief saying, oh, we want you to change the slope on this. We want a different percentage rise on this. And if you're going to have to go out there and do that through the old way and not through the TraceAir way, you're going to add another 6 months or a year to your project. So, I mean, with the demand for higher quality construction processes, it demands higher quality and creative technology solutions. And so they may say, hey, we want, last one will say is waters of the state. Where is the stream bed located? And we find that the Army Corps of Engineers will fight with the Department of Fish and Wildlife on where stream beds exist. Well, if you got to redevelop your plans through the old way, you're going to be spending months on that versus, okay, you want to put the stream bed here, we'll put the stream bed here. So that is, as we get into more protective environmental activity, technology is an essential demand if you're going to be effective and get your jobs done in a timely manner and catch the marketplace. So those are just a few thoughts, Will, but there's a lot going on that in the space that, yeah, we still do things somewhat similar to how we did in the past, but in many ways we don't.
Sure, thank you. And we're running short of time, but we do have a few other things that I wanted to get to. So maybe have some quick answers, quick thoughts on these. What suggestions do any of you have for when you're getting pushback when trying to implement technology, especially maybe from an older generation that hasn't spent their entire lives using technology? Any pointers there?
I mean, the easiest way, I think it's human behavior. No one likes change. Everyone has a routine. And but the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same problem, right? And so I think one approach that we found is, how do you currently do this? Why do you do it? And then explain to them how this technology is very similar to that process. Right. And then usually you have to you have to repeat and do something, generally speaking, maybe 3 times in order to get the habit. And so I think there's some additional hand holding, because I think everyone's scared at first. Even me, when I see a new technology and I'm younger, I'm like, oh, great, I got to learn all this. And so I don't think it's an older generation issue, right? I think it's just a human nature issue.
Sure, that's a good point. Zach, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of agree. I do think, construction is built, with a lot of successful older generations, right? And change is hard. They've been doing something, for so long, and it's been working for them. And I think that's why there is pushback. I mean, we've seen it, and I think you have to just test it and prove it, right? It can work, and this is why. And maybe there is a cost to it, right? But the benefits have to outweigh the cost, and you have to find that balancing act there.
Gotcha. Thank you. We only have about a minute or so left. Guys, maybe in a sentence or two each, in terms of technology in construction, what does the future hold?
I'll jump in here. We really need to be focused on this area of technology and technology improvement, because we're talking about decarbonizing our homes, and we're talking about all these other new technologies related to the environment. So as hard as it is to change, and I agree, we're all small c conservative. We don't like change, that human nature factor, but it's going to come fast, and especially in the state of California. So, embrace technology, otherwise you're going to be left behind.
Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. It's the way of the future, right? And you got to be looking to move forward to put yourself, at the cutting edge. So,
thank you, Josh.
Yeah, my final thought is the pace of construction is probably the fastest paced industry there is. And I don't, if you've ever been on a job site or just, started at 6 a.m. in construction, it's nonstop till about 8 o'clock. And so I think any technology that can reduce the friction and make it easier for contractors or builders, is going to be successful. But I would agree with Dan and Zach that you got to adopt it, or, we're not going backwards. So
Yep.
only looking forward.
You get on the train or miss it altogether, right? One last question that came up, Dan. We have someone who is interested in how businesses can get involved in some of those education programs. Do you have some feedback or a place where they can go to look into that?
Yeah, do go to our website at cbie.org, and we can connect you with a charitable foundation called VITA, so you can find a school in your area and be a sponsor and be a conduit for potential employees. So we do internship programs there. So just go to our website. My contact's there as well, but you'll learn more about the VITA program. So glad to connect you with that. And we have individuals who sponsor schools and bring back metal shop and wood shop.
Great. Fantastic. Does anybody have any final thoughts?
I'll just say thank you for the opportunity, Will. It's great to be here with my colleagues, and appreciate you pushing us to be more technologically savvy. We need to be doing that, Will.
Well, thank you for coming and lending your expertise. I appreciate it. Thanks, Zach. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you. Thanks
Hey,
for having us.
thank you. I appreciate everybody that attended. Thank you, guys.